The NBA playoffs are 20 games away. So today is simple. We're going to be going through both conferences, predicting who makes the playoffs for an opportunity at Destiny. We're on the road to 18,000 subscribers, so don't forget, if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. That's all I ask. Let's get into it. Let's kick it off here in the Wild, Wild West. Of course, the most exciting conference when we talk about playoffs, just because there's so many good teams. But here we go, 6 through 10 as of today. Now, I do want to say at the 10th spot, the Dallas Mavericks are currently at that spot with a 2 or 3 game lead over the Phoenix Suns. But with all the injuries that they do have, man, I do think the Suns will figure out a way with all the talent that they do have to get that number 10 spot. So this is what I'm projecting to be 6 through 10. The Warriors at 6, of course, then you have the Timberwolves, Clippers, Kings, and the aforementioned Phoenix Suns. I do think at the number 6 seed, the Warriors will grab that spot. A couple weeks back, I had a video. I said the most exciting team to watch on the second half of the season is the Golden State Warriors, because after the Jimmy Butler trade, I thought they were going to be one of the top 3 hottest teams going in to the playoffs, and they sure look like it next to the Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. But for 7 to 10, let me show you guys something. Over on Tankathon, which is a great website, by the way, for all sports things related, here is the current strength of schedule left here in the NBA. The Suns have the hardest schedule left. So despite only 18 games left and the hardest schedule and ground to make up, yes, I still do think that they can grab that number 10 spot. Sacramento is only 1 spot ahead of the Suns. They're at number 2. You see the Lakers up there, the Denver Nuggets up there, Milwaukee, Memphis. Some of these top teams and teams that are trying to just get into the dance have very tough roads left. But here at the bottom of the list, you notice Boston, Atlanta, Minnesota, some of these teams that are in those situations, but they have a lot easier of a road here to get to the big dance. But here we are with 7 through 10 in the Western Conference. If you need a refresher on how the play-in works, I'll break it down very quickly. 7 and 8, they will play in a 1-game situation. Winner moves on to the playoffs as the number 7 seed. The loser will get one more chance at the playoffs as they will play the winner of the 9-10 matchup at the bottom. The 9-10, it's a winner-go-home situation. Pretty simple there. The Minnesota Timberwolves, out of these 4 teams, have the best conference record and they have the best road record. Not that that second stat is going to help them much in the play-in tournament. The Clippers have the best home record out of these 4 teams. Again, not going to help them here in this first round matchup. Now, for the Timberwolves and the Clippers, in my projections, will be the 7-8 first play-in game there in the Western Conference. Minnesota is 3-0 against the Clippers this year. In 2 of those games, the Clippers have scored 92 or less points. They have struggled to score against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Minnesota's 3-0 against the Clippers this year. Kawhi has only played in the recent game, but I do want to say that it was one of those ramp-up games for Kawhi Leonard, so something to look out for if these teams were to match up in a couple weeks. But at the end of the day, Minnesota has dominated this matchup with or without Kawhi Leonard. I'm going to trust one of the greatest young playoff performers that we have in the league today, and a team that made it to the Western Conference Finals just last season. Different look, but again, pedigree and again, situations relatively the same. I'm going to take the Timberwolves to go out to be the 7 seed and to match up with the Denver Nuggets. The storylines here that I'm going to create this year, just watch out for them. It's going to be exciting. And then on the bottom half of this list, we have the 9-10 matchup between the Kings and the Phoenix Suns. Sacramento's 2-0 in this matchup this year, but both games were played in November. Why is that important? Well, that was before the De'Aaron Fox trade, which he had pretty big games in both of those wins early on in the season versus the Phoenix Suns. Now, you saw it earlier. The Suns have a tough road ahead of them. They're going to be banged up by this point. But if they want to make it to the playoffs, they're going to have to be hot. And I think with the momentum that they're going to have just to be in this position against a team that I love Sabonis. I really do. But in a 1-game scenario, it's hard to bet against 2 of the greatest individual scores this game has ever seen. So I'm going to go with a bit of an upset here. I'm going to have the Phoenix Suns stay alive in a 1-game scenario and knock off the Sacramento Kings. That puts the Kings in an interesting position. There's already been some rumblings. What do we do? And what is the future of Domantas Sabonis? Those questions are now at the top of their checking board here going into the offseason. But now, for the Suns' second time, it's really a win or go home situation. The 8 seed Clippers get a second chance at the playoffs while the Suns are just trying to survive. Who makes it? Who misses it? Let's break it down. In this matchup, the Clippers would be home. Now, I do want to say, head coaching advantage, I give to the Clippers. Now, when you look at the best players in this game, I think the best two are going to the Phoenix Suns. Not a lot of games where that's not the case with Devin Booker and Kevin Durant, superstar players, advantage for the Suns in that department. Now, as far as overall rosters, it really comes down to who's going to be healthy. I think, for the Clippers, you got a lot more questions than the Suns heading into this game. I do think the Clippers have their way. I think the Clippers are going to be able to score because all four of those games in the regular season were relatively high scoring. You're home. You can score with the Phoenix Suns. The Suns can't really defend a soul. They're one of the worst defenses in the league. But at the end of the day, man, who would I rather see in the playoffs? Who would I rather see take on the Oklahoma City Thunder? For storyline and narrative perspective, I'm going to roll with the Phoenix Suns. I think they have the offense to keep up with anybody, right? And if they're going to be this hot at this point in the season, I'm going to roll with them here to stay hot and at least to make the playoffs. But Clippers fans, and again, NBA fans in general, keep this in mind. Is it really going to matter against the Oklahoma City Thunder? I think both teams at best will be gentlemen swept in the first round. But who would I rather see? Storyline wise, narrative wise, I'm going to take Kevin Durant and the Phoenix Suns to advance to this NBA's playoffs. Here's the bracket on the left side. You have the Thunder hosting the Phoenix Suns, who are at this point battle tested, right? After having the hardest schedule throughout the latter half of the season, then going through 2 win or go home situation games. The Suns, if that's the case, it's going to make this a little bit interesting as they're going to be super hot going into the playoffs. But again, best case scenario, gentlemen swept there. Bottom left of the bracket, we have the Lakers with a banged up LeBron James falling down the rankings, hosting the Houston Rockets. I think if you're the Lakers, this is a relatively not favorable situation because the Rockets are young, they're hungry, and they're going to be physical in this series. So whether Luka gets banged up or LeBron's going to be banged up, the storylines in this one are going to be Dillon Brooks versus the stars of the LA Lakers because, of course, I think he's going to get one of them hurt. I just want to put it that way. So for the Lakers, I think you advance, but it's not the team that you want to play because of how physical the Rockets can be. Now, storylines on the right side. We have a rubber match between the Denver Nuggets and Jokic versus Ant and the Timberwolves. Years ago, when the Nuggets made their title run, they first ran into the Timberwolves. And the Timberwolves had the most success against the Nuggets in that playoff run as they got, I think, 2 games in the first round of that playoffs. But the Nuggets would go on and win the title. And then this past year, the Timberwolves got their revenge. Western Conference semifinals. Anthony Edwards put the team on his back. And I believe it was a 7-game series, if I'm not mistaken. Regardless, Anthony Edwards and company, they got their revenge and evened it up at 1-1 against Jokic in the playoffs. This is their rubber match. Both teams have questions around their star players. But who's going to get enough to win that series? A mini series there between superstars, right? And then in the bottom right, this series reminds me of the Sacramento Kings when they were on top of the world, lighting the beam just a few years ago. Young, up-and-coming team with rising stars playing the savvy veteran Warriors who were trying to repeat at the time. The Warriors took care of business. In Game 7, Steph Curry had 50 and knocked off the young and rising Sacramento Kings. I think that's going to happen yet again. I think the Grizzlies might even be a gentleman swept kind of a team. Jimmy has a lot to prove, especially after saying he doesn't want to play for the Grizzlies. Steph Curry and Draymond, they still want to cement at least another championship in this team's dynasty. A lot of interesting storylines here in the Western Conference. I do think that we get at least one upset in the first round. I just think it might be the Warriors, and that might not even be an upset. Now, as we transition to the Eastern Conference, the play-in is set in stone. It's just a matter of positioning due to the teams that are that bad at the bottom of the conference, and there's a pretty big gap between the 6th seed and the 7th seed. So unless there's any dramatic changes, like the Pacers falling off or the Pistons coming back down to what they were in recent years, this play-in is pretty much set. Now, I do want to say all 4 of these teams, They're not playing great basketball, at least as of late. All four are 4-6 exactly in their last 10 games. Out of these four, Orlando, best conference record, best home record, though that might not really help them much here in the play-in. And Atlanta has the best record on the road. Again, might not help them if the play-in stays the exact same. Now, the winner of the 7-8 matchup gets to play the Boston Celtics. The 8 seed gets to play Cleveland in my projections. And again, there's not much movement projected wise here in the Eastern Conference. For the 7-8 matchup, though, let's look at it. Let's break it down and let's come to a winner. The season series is split at 1-1. Jalen Suggs was in both of those games. He's no longer playing the rest of the season, and that's something to keep in mind for this potential play-in game. So who's going to guard Trae Young? Something to look out for. But on the flip side, maybe best player in the series, Paolo Banchero, in this mini one-game series. And then after that, I think I'll put it this way. I think the Magic come into this game. They have two of the best three players. I think the head coaching, I guess, difference, that's a question. Who has the better head coaching staff? I'd probably lean towards Orlando. So Orlando has two of the three best players. They're on the road in this game, but they might have the slight head coaching advantage. So which direction are we going to go here? I'm actually going to go with Atlanta. Man, this is an Orlando team that struggles to score the basketball, and it is just so difficult every single possession, let alone night, for guys like Paolo and Franz to be their best versions because they're constantly facing double teams. They're getting pressured on the ball, off the ball. They are getting gassed by the second, third quarter, and it's incredibly difficult for this team to win games when the guys and the supporting cast around their star players are not giving them enough. And that's why this team is struggling to score 100 points consistently, which in today's modern day basketball is atrocious to not score at least 100 points. But for Orlando, they're doing it consistently. They're not scoring. And I think in a one-game scenario, I'm going to trust Trae Young and this offense to get hot over the Orlando Magic. So I'm going to go with the Hawks in that one. They're going to play the Boston Celtics. Now, when we move to the bottom of this bracket, the 9-10 matchup, the Heat are hosting, the Bulls are visiting. The Bulls are 1-0 this year in this series, but I do want to say that game took place early February, meaning no Jimmy Butler for the Heat, and there was Zach LaVine for the Bulls. So different scenario here for both teams as both of those guys are shipped off. They're out of town. They were moved at the deadline. The Bulls, I will say this, they can make the playoffs based on this reason alone. They can score 130, 140 points on any given night if they make their shots because they play at one of the fastest paces in the league, and it doesn't matter what defense you play. If their shots are falling at their pace, they can pretty much keep up with anybody. But I do want to say, their defense is just as bad as how good their offense can be, right? So they could score 130, but they might give up 135. That's just how the Chicago Bulls experience is in 2025. But the Miami Heat, I'm going to trust them, and I'm going to trust one of the greatest playoff coaches and coaches in general that this game has ever seen. Erik Spoelstra in these playoff games always finds a way to win, and I'm going to take him here to advance to a Battle of Florida. Orlando, Miami, the season series is split even, 2-2, but I do want to say that Miami has won the last two games, and that, of course, comes with the injuries of Jalen Suggs along the way for the Magic. But Paolo was healthy. Something to look out for in this matchup. I do want to say, hey, head coaching advantage, there's no question here. It goes to Spo there in Miami. Now, for Orlando, you probably have the best two players in this game. Or, hey, two of the best three, given that Bam is rightfully so the second best player. I misspoke just a moment ago. But hey, Orlando, two of the best three players in this game. You're at home, though not much of an advantage, given both teams are from Florida. In Miami, I mean, hey, you have the head coaching advantage and you have the second best player in this game. So I could see this game going both ways, but for this reason alone, who would I rather see? At the end of the day, guys, let's be real. I don't think either of these teams have more than a gentleman's sweep in their future here in the first round against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So Orlando, I would rather see them. I'd rather see Paolo, where last year he kind of took a big step up in the playoffs, whether if it was just his game in general, his aggressiveness, and he, of course, had that, 40 or 50 point game there late in the series. Paolo last year was exciting to watch against the Cavaliers, and though they are kind of banged up, I'd rather see them in the playoffs against the Cavs over the Miami Heat. I'm a Cavs fan for the simple fact that Spo might pull something out his ass, and Miami might push that to being a 6 or 7 game series. So I would rather play the Orlando Magic, and that's going to be my prediction. I'm going to say that they look at, they go into this game and they say, we can't let the Atlanta and the Miami game get away from us. We at least got to make the playoffs for the second year in a row. I think Paolo puts this team on his back as the best player in this game and gets the job done for the Magic. Again, as a Cavs fan, I really don't want to play Miami in the first round. But here is my playoff predictions as of right now. The Cavs and the Magic rematch from last year. And then on the bottom half, you have the Milwaukee Bucks hosting the Detroit Pistons. For the Pistons, man, it's been an incredible season. I projected them to be the 6th seed coming into the season. Took a bit of a shot in the dark there, and hey, it paid out. They've had an incredible year despite losing a 20-point per game score in Jaden Ivey. Cade is rising into superstardom. They get to play Milwaukee, who definitely have the star and the, I guess, experience advantage in this matchup. Giannis, Pistons should be a physical brawl with Stu and Jalen Duren battling Giannis. Then you got the Cade and Dame matchup. That's an exciting one for sure. I'd be excited to watch that one. On the right side, you got Boston and the Atlanta Hawks. They have some playoff history in the Trae Young era. Exciting one there, but I think, again, Boston takes care of business. And then in the bottom, rematch of last year's playoffs, if I'm not mistaken, between the New York Knicks and the Indiana Pacers. Both teams are healthy, I'll put it that way, right? Knicks healthy this time. Brunson is healthy this time. Hopefully he's back and ready to go for playoffs. And for the Pacers, you're not as hot as you were going into last year's playoffs. So, interesting matchup here. We know the Pacers can score and beat anybody because of if that offense is clicking, it's clicking. But hey, are they going to find the defense? And can they find the consistency to compete on a nightly basis against these top-end teams? But that is my Eastern Conference playoffs. If you don't like the graphics, well, here's a simple list view. I'm going to read off these teams in the East and the West for you audio listeners. But let's get into it here in the East. 1 through 4, we have Cleveland, Boston, New York, and Milwaukee having home court in the first round. To round out the East, we have Detroit, Indiana, Atlanta, and the Orlando Magic. Of course, if you want to have the Heat in there, I'm completely fine with that as well. In the Western Conference, the hosting teams are the OKC Thunder, Denver Nuggets, Memphis Grizzlies, and the LA Lakers. 5 through 8 are Houston, Golden State. Watch out for Golden State, man. They're going to be scary. They might be able to make a run. Minnesota at 7 and the Suns at 8. Can I be completely wrong about the Suns? Absolutely. But who would I rather see? I'd rather see Kevin Durant face his former team on his potential last season with the Phoenix Suns. Of course, we know how he lost a tough playoff series with OKC to end his career there. Does he lose one against the Thunder with the Phoenix Suns to eventually join the Thunder again down the line if the Thunder can't get it done? I think, again, a little bit of a full circle moment in that regard. But episode 260 in the books. 20 games left in the NBA regular season. Who makes the playoffs? Who misses the cut? And what kind of matchups could we see in just a few weeks' time? Let me know in the comments your predictions, hot takes, or hey, any of your thoughts going into this playoff stretch. What's something you're looking out for, man? But hey, what a hell of a ride that we have in front of us.